This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. More about them in just a moment. It was on the 9th of March 2019 that an article written by Sapna Maheshwari in the New York Times was published, titled "YouTube is improperly collecting children's data, consumer groups say." This article was one of the first to report on the unsettling news that YouTube had been alleged by 20 consumer advocacy groups to be violating a children's privacy law by collecting information on people aged under 13 years old. They would be sued big time for this. But to understand why, let me fill you in. If you don't know much about this law, the important parts that you need to know is that children under the age of 13 cannot consent to having their data stored by social media companies. And it's all down to a law known as the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, as you might know it more famously as. This is one of many reasons why some social media platforms just don't provide service to children under the age of 13. YouTube, however, did, and it still does, but once it was found to be violating COPPA, it might have regretted it. Among other things, it was accused of tracking the viewing history of users under 13 in order to facilitate targeted advertisements, which, trust me, is something that we'll cover in much more depth later on. But as it turns out, this story actually goes a little bit deeper than that, because if you know anything about YouTube, you'll know about YouTube Kids. Just in case you don't, it's a child-friendly area of the platform that does not collect data such as the names, addresses, and contact information of its child users. Apparently, it also has a sort of child lock feature on it, meaning that at least in theory, a parent has to be present there for their child to use it. So the question has to be asked, if they have YouTube Kids in place for those younger viewers, how on earth could YouTube be violating COPPA? Well, if you're a creator yourself, or you just like watching videos of us rant about the platform, you might have already heard the term before. Because a couple of years ago, there were a lot of creators that struggled with demonetization when COPPA came to the platform. Because there are some YouTubers that create child-friendly content, but they're not on YouTube Kids. But since you can't advertise to children in the way that YouTube does, creators that have been deemed to make child-friendly content on YouTube's main platform had their videos demonetized. It's to my understanding that children under the age of 13 were logging into YouTube's main platform and watching videos on there, and they had their information tracked, which you can't do, and so YouTube had not done enough to discourage this from happening. So if you're ever wondering why about 90% of creators hit their content in the ballpark of a PG-13 to a 17 audience, that's about half the story. In court, this was described as egregious and also extremely lucrative for Google. They had profited off this big time, and with this being the third time since 2011 that they had come under fire for violating children's privacy, and having recorded over $30 billion in profits the year that the lawsuit began, by September 2019, a number of how much Google would lose was announced, and it was declared that they would be fined a whopping $170 million. And obviously, this also came with them having to restructure their monetization system, so videos that were deemed to be targeted towards children would no longer take in the money that they once did. It's fair to say that many people were both shocked and appalled by the fact that Google would just collect the data of everyone and anyone they saw fit. And if you want to make sure that your data is both nice and protected, then you need to download Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of today's video. Listen up, ladies and gents, if you're in the market for trying to keep your online identity safe and private, there really is no better choice than by going with Surfshark VPN. In case you don't know, a VPN, or virtual private network, is a service that keeps you safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. That means that you can't be tracked or recorded online, thus giving you privacy and peace of mind. Literally, at just the tap of a button, anyone who's interested in spying on your online data now thinks that you're somewhere else in the world. From Albania to Vietnam, this protects you from big companies that might want your data. And even better yet, for absolute privacy, even Surfshark doesn't monitor what you're doing online, so it keeps no activity logs of what you do. So anyone that's trying to track my IP address has no chance. So if you're interested in securing your online data, click the link in the description and use my code FoxAkimbo now to get a whopping 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. And if you get it and you decide that it's just not for you, that is completely okay as well, because Surfshark does a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning that there is absolutely zero risk. So if you're interested in Surfshark, just make sure to click the link in the description below. And I want to take the time to thank Surfshark VPN for being the proud sponsor of today's video. So let's move on to talk about more of the darkest depths of YouTube Kids content. And when it comes to it, there is an elephant in the room that I just have to address, and that is Elsagate. If you're one of the 4 or 5 people watching this video that have no clue what Elsagate is, I'll give you a little recap. It was about 5 or 6 years ago on YouTube when the platform came under heavy fire from the mainstream media after it was revealed that it had a terminal problem with people making horribly violent, sexual, or otherwise mature content, and then wrapping it up by posing as harmless kids content featuring Elsa, which is where the scandal got its name, but also featuring many other characters that kids love and are drawn to, such as Spider-Man, Mickey and Minnie Mouse, the Avengers and the Paw Patrol. This very well could be the most serious scandal that YouTube has ever been on the receiving end of. But let's be honest, it's been covered to absolute death. And so today, in this video, I want to touch on something that's been dubbed Elsagate 2.0. Now, the reason that this is called Elsagate 2.0 is because this is allegedly a return to Elsagate. But if you really dig into things, it seems as though the Elsagate never really stopped. It might have hidden back into the shadows for a year or two, but if you were a kid with one finger up his nose and the other one scrolling on your mum's iPad, you could easily find content that isn't fit for someone your age. Just within 5 or 10 minutes of going on the Elsagate subreddits, I found this screenshot of straight up porn that's literally on YouTube, fit within a playlist that's been titled Hey Arnold. I've also seen a video that's targeted towards children featuring a real chick with a knife up against its throat. I won't be showing it here for obvious reasons. And then I found this thread showing all of these different thumbnails that are again appealing towards children specifically to go and click on them. And because of this, I'm inclined to say that Elsagate isn't having a resurgence. I don't think that it ever stopped. During my research for this, I came across a few different videos describing how it's back and worse than ever. The best of these videos, in my opinion, that I've seen is Raymundo's, and I'll link his in the description if you want to go and delve into this topic in more depth. But to summarize what he was saying, this YouTube niche, if you want to call it that, has just changed to catch up with popular trends, with Huggy Wuggy or Among Us now being the properties of focus. The content that's being uploaded have very specific themes that are constantly being shown, such as pregnancy, dirty feet, or human waste. The theory is that these are all fetish themes, and the sick people behind these channels are trying to normalize their fetishes to a child audience. Raymundo also brings up some of the same points that I did with the Hey Arnold playlist and that, so I guess he's also in the subreddit, but Raymundo made his video 3 weeks ago, and I reached out to him to try and find out if his video had been manually reviewed, meaning that in theory, a human would have watched the entire way through and seen this. And you would hope that they would bring this to the attention of people in power that could do something about this, but as of 3 weeks later, the Hey Arnold playlists are still up. The unfortunate truth is that with a platform as large as YouTube, with 500 hours of content being uploaded every single minute, it would be near impossible to completely purge all of this content. It seems like a sort of whack-a-mole type beat, where the second that you take one of these channels down, 3 or 4 just replace them. But on the other hand, it's been about 6 years and it seems as though that we aren't much closer to solving this problem. The characters that have been the target of this might have changed, but the content has become more subtle. The largest offenders of this might have been terminated, but unfortunately, we're not done yet. I think that it's very important, however, to acknowledge that YouTube has made some effort in trying to iron out the problems in kids' content. And one of the best ways they've done this is by essentially enforcing a blanket ban on comment sections on kids' videos, because a couple of years ago, these were being hijacked by predators. Here's the deal, realistically, a comment left by a 6-year-old is of absolutely zero value to anyone, let's be honest. A comment left by a 36-year-old with the wrong intentions can have dramatic consequences. So there isn't a single shred of doubt in my mind that YouTube got it right here. This all started back in 2019, when a video from Matt Watson went viral on the r/drama subreddit, garnering 188,000 upvotes. This video, which has since been completely blurred, showed what he called a wormhole of child exploitation videos, about how someone could essentially find these sorts of videos with literally 5 or so clicks on a fresh YouTube page. And it goes without saying that this was an absolutely abhorrent problem for a number of reasons. Firstly, the exploitation. Do I need to say anything more? Secondly, these videos became a breeding ground for predators to talk and communicate. And thirdly, these videos a lot of the time were monetized, so therefore YouTube was making money off of this. I'm kind of lost for words with this entire thing. It's one thing knowing about it, a lot of people do, but it's another thing actually having done the research into it and knowing the intricacies of it. So I want to take a step back for a moment and talk about the subreddit, or at the very least talk about Matt Watson's post and what people have had to say about it. Firstly, people say that there's too much content being uploaded to YouTube to police, which is a point I made just before. Once again, just as with Elsagate, this might be true, but YouTube is good enough at demonetizing normal creators' videos, so that bot they have to check videos should hopefully in the modern day, 4 years later, have been programmed to completely expunge this content from YouTube. It's not needed. Secondly, the reason that it would take 2 or 3 clicks to get to this content is the fact that the YouTube algorithm was working the way that it always has. It brings you content that people that have similar viewing patterns to you watch. So guess what? If one creep is going to watch one of these videos, they're going to watch others too. So something would have to be done about that as well. YouTube eventually took away comments from kids' content in February 2019, after it's very likely that they were aware of these problems for quite a while. In November 2017, Joanna Wright, a former vice president of product management at YouTube, shared a 5-step blog post about how the video sharing giant planned to make YouTube safer, including a tougher application of YouTube guidelines, removing inappropriate advertising, blocking comments, providing guidance for family-friendly channels, and engaging with experts on the matter. But more and more in the 5 years since, although there haven't been too many new mainstream controversies come to light in reference to this, it would be perhaps a bit naive to believe that it's all hunky-dory right now. Don't take this as gospel because it's just my opinion, but I have to believe that somewhere deep down there in the darkest depths there is more of this kind of content lurking beneath the surface. This is not the last we've heard of it, even if we all hope that it will be. Okay, that was definitely the most dark and twisted parts of this video, so let's carry on to talk about something a little bit more lighthearted.
Mom and Dad, please make sure to take away the electronic devices from your kids now, because studies have shown that children's entertainment such as Cocomelon might interfere with the development of your child.
Now, I'm not a parent, not yet anyway. I really hope to be one day, but as of right now, I am nowhere near it. And so I can understand some apprehension coming from the parents watching this video, watching a young man who is nowhere near being a father talking about how you should or shouldn't raise your child. So allow me to refer to a study conducted by the University of Alberta to back my point. This study was conducted by Dr. Piyush Mandhane, and it found that children between the ages of 3 and 5 especially needed to develop a healthy relationship with how long they're looking at screens. Going on to say that 1 hour of high quality programming for children of that age bracket was the upper limit. The researchers of the University of Alberta found that children that exceeded 2 hours of screen time a day were more likely to exhibit a number of behavioural problems, particularly paying attention, by the time they turned 5 years old. Additionally, children that spent more than 2 hours a week participating in a form of structured physical activity were less likely to experience mental health problems. So it seems as though, based on that study, the more time your children are up on their feet being active, and the less they're sitting down just mindlessly gazing at Cocomelon, the better. It yields only positive results. And here's the kicker. According to this study, children who were watching screens for more than 2 hours a day were 7.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD compared to children who watch screens for less than 30 minutes a day. That is gargantuan. And this isn't even to touch on a theory that spread around the internet since April of last year, in which people think that watching Cocomelon increases tantrums and delays your child's speech. That is just a theory. As of me writing and recording this video, there is no complete and concrete evidence for this, but people do think it. The future effects that this will have on a generation of children that have been raised by it is still very much yet to be seen. ADHD numbers in children have almost doubled in the 20 years between 1997 and 2016. And though diagnoses have changed in that time, there is evidence to suggest that there's something impacting modern children that didn't impact them 25 years ago. And I wonder if letting your child that's say 4 years old scroll on short form content that's no longer than 60 seconds might have an impact on their imagination and their attention span compared to the forms of media that children back in the early 2000s or late 90s were consuming. And I know what you might say, back then people were just raised by the TV and now it's just changed to the internet. And I actually agree with you. I think a lot of what they say on The Simpsons about kids being absolutely absorbed by the TV has just evolved to them on the internet in the modern day. Even with myself as an online creator and an advocate for the fact that some online content can be as good as television, when it comes to kids' videos, it's just not that. I feel as though kids' content on TV generally seems to be a bit more focused on learning morals and teaching kids stuff, at least compared to individuals on YouTube who could make literally whatever they want, regardless of education quality. That's just my personal opinion. And if you doubt me, I can actually back this up in parts with a study, but we're gonna have to move on for me to get there. In the meantime though, I want to, at least for a time, pivot from studies to talk about theories. And this next topic is going to be definitely the most controversial in this video. And that's because we're going to talk about politics. Yeah, the comment section is going to be fun. But the reason we're talking about this is because some people associated on the right have accused those on the left of trying to indoctrinate their children via YouTube content, spreading left-wing propaganda. So the question is, have they? Let's explore that. Now, first things first, this is not a political channel in the slightest. We touch on political topics from time to time, and I myself am politically informed, but I don't like pushing any agenda either side. I don't really have an agenda, so think of me as like a messenger. But if you're not aware, there have been claims, especially over the past few years, that children especially are being targeted by political groups. Both the right and the left often claim this, but the right tend to be a bit more vocal in this point, so I'm going to primarily focus on them. They claim that there's a lot of political content available to children on YouTube that's actually targeted towards them, but it isn't age appropriate because at their age, this is nothing more than indoctrination. For example, content focused on drag queens, the topic of consent, and also white privilege. A lot of this is also said to take place in classrooms across the USA because, at least from what I've seen, Europe and the rest of the world don't really seem to be so worried about this. The question lies firstly in what can and should be taught to children. Should societal problems be taught to them, and if they should be, how so? You surely can't bring something up in class and then only show the children half of the argument, right? Just the side that you agree with. You have to give them both sides of the coin. And secondly, if you believe that this kind of stuff is appropriate to teach to children, when do you do it? At what age can a child even grasp the concept of what a drag queen is, or what it means to be transgender, or what white privilege is? Should they not be protected from the talks of these deeper topics until they're old enough to more naturally understand? That's completely up to you. I'm not touching that debate in the slightest. But I will give you the flip side because although it's not as common, there have been some people on the left that have claimed that those on the right are doing the exact same thing. PragerU, for example, I'm sure many of you might have heard of before, but just in case you haven't, it's a popular American advocacy group that leans quite conservative. They have 3 million subscribers, their videos get a ton of views, and they too have a children's entertainment wing. Same story with PragerU's now parent company, The Daily Wire. The Daily Wire, if you don't know it, is a media company that employs many of the biggest conservative commentators such as Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and Matt Walsh. And they've invested $100 million into creating content for children that they claim is without ideology, but whether it actually is in practice, I don't know. Realistically, children tend to have the same political views as their parents, and it's only as they grow a bit older that they can actually consider for themselves how they view the world. But YouTube has come out to say that they understand that each family is different, and so they're happy with things just the way they are, and that political content from both sides that is aimed at children is not in violation of any community guidelines. So it seems as though this political arms race for your children's ideology, if you believe there even is one, is set to continue for the time being. And I want to hit you guys with another study now, something that's going to really wrap up everything we've kind of said today, because this one goes into basically everything we've already talked about in much more detail. From advertisements to inappropriate content to political content to uncovering the sorts of videos that children are watching, it's called Young Kids and YouTube: How Ads, Toys and Games Dominate Viewing. All of the videos used in this study were compiled by a total of 191 parents, and they were all from YouTube's main site, not YouTube Kids. The study was focused on YouTube and not YouTube Kids because of what we've already discussed: advertising, inappropriate content, and the fact that it's easier for parents to collect data on YouTube's main site rather than YouTube Kids. They found that advertising was pervasive, but the concern comes in when you consider that most target audiences experience ads on less content than young children. So as it turns out, advertisers are actually targeting young children more than the average person. And of these ads that parents found on their children's content, 1 in 5 were deemed to be age inappropriate. These children apparently experienced ads that were focused on violent video games, lingerie, and political messages coming from both the right and the left. And as for the content itself, apparently of these videos watched, 27% of them were content fit for older audiences. And 75% of these videos were purely suited for entertainment. 25% of them were seen as educational, and only 5% of them were seen to have had high educational value. In these videos, out of all inappropriate content types, the most commonly featured is violence, with roughly 30% of the videos being watched including at least a mild form of violence. The characters in these videos were only described as being a positive role model or a diverse representation 24% of the time. And as for you parents, shout out to the 97% of you who claim to at least somewhat monitor your child's online activity. This is split between the 63% who say they very much monitor what content their kids consume, compared to the 34% who say they somewhat monitor it. And then of course there's the 3% who say they don't monitor what their kids are watching whatsoever. If that's one of you, good luck. I hope this video is filling you in on some stuff. Parents tend to watch their children's content the least at about 3 to 5 and 11 to 14 years old, which coincidentally happens to be the ages where most advertising is targeted towards them. The study also split the findings between boys and girls, and they found that girls tended to watch content more focused on toys, whereas boys watched more gaming and challenge videos. These videos, all things included, tended to be of at least moderate quality, with only 4% of them being deemed as poor quality. But consumerism seemed to play a very large part in a lot of these videos too. Apparently 45% of them featured consumerism in at least a moderate level. And the problem here is that study after study have shown that children don't understand the intention of advertisements. They also form parasocial relationships with characters they love. And as much as that's a buzzword that I just hate to use because it's been bled to death, the fact of the matter is children build bonds with these characters. They're more likely to trust them, they're more likely to follow recommendations from them. And if you want a quick rundown of other inappropriate content that was seen, at least mild sexual content was seen in 6% of these videos, at least mild alcohol, drugs, and smoking was depicted in 5%, and gendered stereotypes was seen in 9% of these videos. And so what does this all mean? Honestly, I don't know. Let it be known that this study included its own limitations. It's not perfect by any means, few studies ever are, but it suggests that there are problems that need to be addressed. I don't ever want to be a news anchor. I don't want to ever be the person to tell you to worry and panic and freak out. And I don't have all the answers. As I said, I'm not a dad yet. I'm not even close. There really is no secret antidote I can give you. But at least in hopes for the future, for a generation not just born after the advent of the internet, but a generation that's been born after YouTube has become what it has today, we can sit down and acknowledge that there are some severe problems. There's still so much left to be done at giving these kids the very best chance at harnessing the best that the internet has to offer. Giving them entertainment, yes, but also high quality, thought-provoking educational content. I want to thank you guys very much for watching this video. It's been a pleasure, and a shout out to Surfshark VPN for being the sponsor. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you liked it and subscribed if you haven't already. No pressure though. Apart from that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.